Hello, beautiful peeps. Welcome to Out the Brew Cupboard Chatty Ramble with me, Carly of Bardware. Hello and welcome to our podcast. It's been a little bit of a while, I had a bit of a gap really. Hope you're all well and hope everything is fabulous as always. We've just had a strawberry full moon, which is quite interesting. There's been a few interesting things going on. I don't know if everyone else has noticed it. Grandchildren have been playing up. Pets have been playing up. But there's also noticed there's a bit of an energy shift, which is quite interesting. We've just done, with the stall, we've just done a couple of big shows. So we've done the Steam Rally, which is local to us in Castle Combe, and also did Chippenham Folk Festival, which was really enjoyable, as of always. And it's quite interesting to see we have the next sort of awakening or realisation of people coming through. I don't know if awakening or how you'd explain it, but the next sort of band of people. Now, a few years ago when I did Chippenham Folk Festival, we had lots of people coming through. Lots of people had that, what I call a Pac-Man effect, which is they were realising that there was something happening, there was a shift, there was a change, they could feel it, they were looking for something else, they were sort of getting to know themselves, trying to understand what was going on, thinking they were sort of on their own or finding all this information and literally going along much, really, really quickly, very enthusiastically going along and munching all this wonderful information, which is great, absolutely great, but very, very fast, very, very quickly, sort of not going grab, but that type of thing, if you get my list, must listen to this, must read that, must do this, must do that, must write a book of shadows, must do that, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, whoa, calm down, And you sort of basically want to say to them, breathe, stop, it's fine. So that was going on some years ago. And in between that and where we are now, there's been slowly different types of people coming through. Some people coming through with the same Pac-Man thing. Some people coming through a little bit more laid back, a little bit slower, going, yeah, I know there's something going on, I'm just taking my time, just absorbing it as they go along. So which is really nice. But this time around at Chippenham Folk Festival, there was some really interesting. We had obviously, everybody knows Bardware, Frog Lane and Frog Valley Emporium do become a signpost or are a signpost. So you get a lot of people stand in front of you and go, where do I go? Help! I'm not mad. I thought I was mad. So we have a lot of that going on. And this time round, there was about 4 people that came to the stall and stood there and went, oh my God, this is amazing, but very chilled, very laid back. And, they sort of go, oh, I thought, I didn't think there was many of us out there, sort of, pagans. And it's like, well, I said to them, there's a lot more actually than you realise. And I was quite surprised how still in the broom cupboard some people are. I think it's because I go out there and go, yeah, I'm pagan, whatever. And I don't let it worry me. It's quite interesting. So here was 4 lovely people that came up to the stall. One of the couple being military based, which was really interesting. So they had a military background and they were sort of at the forefront of trying to get the pagan following recognised in the military environment, which was quite interesting. Again, she said, I know we're out there. She said, but this is amazing. You're like out in Chippenham Folk Festival. I'm like, yeah, it was great. And then the other one was a very lovely young lady who was like, oh, I didn't think there was many of us. And then there was another chap who was absolutely buzzing. He was lovely. but it was a different type of it's a different type of way. You know, they seem to be very much in touch with, very comfortable with themselves, very already knowledgeable, like an old soul. This time around there was lots of old souls that were like, yeah, you know, I just didn't realise there was so many of us out there. But, you know, really happy where they were. And it was really interesting because everybody was of that same sort of laid backness. So it was a completely different type of you know, oh, I'm so pleased I found you. But absolutely lovely. And I've been talking to a good friend of mine about this as well. And they're saying the same thing. They're saying, you know, people are seeking the knowledge, but they seem to be taking their time doing it. That Pac-Man thing of I've got to have everything now seems to have disappeared. It's a case of, right, I know it's not going to disappear. I'm going to, you know, have a look at it, take my time, know where I'm going, comfortable in myself, just need to find more of us. It seems very much like that, which is, you know, it's amazing. Isn't it interesting from how long ago did I first do Chipmunk Folk Festival? 6 years ago? 5, 6 years ago? So, you know, I think this was our 5th one we'd done. Obviously, we've missed one in the middle. So it's probably, you know, 6 years ago. So, God, doesn't time fly when you're having fun? It's scary, isn't it? So, yeah, it's quite a different. The same thing's happening, but in a not so much of a yum 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 needy way. Yeah, so very interesting. So there's one thing I sort of wanted to have a little bit of a chatty ramble about. The other thing I've been meaning to chat about, I really need to get my friend up on and have a chatty ramble on our podcast, which would be really cool. Because we were actually talking about before a couple of weeks ago, and all the madness went mad. We were wanted to talk about sort of shadow work and the real proper terminologies of that, which I briefly touched on another podcast. But the one thing I did want to pop up, and it's coming up a lot at the minute, is, and it's a very taboo well, it's not a very taboo subject, that's a silly thing to say. It's one of those subjects that it's inevitably going to happen to all of us at some point in time. There's no ifs and buts about it. It happens to everything that is living. But we all, well, not all, some of us sway away from it. And yeah, it's quite interesting, and others have different thought patterns. So I just sort of wanted to briefly really touch on death and dying. And it's not going to be morbid, because death and dying isn't a morbid thing. It's a celebration of life. It's a movement onto another journey. It's a progression of where you're going and what's happening. The interesting thing that I recently felt and have recently seen and been sort of experienced is the death and the dying on the living, the effect it still has on the living, the people that are not left behind, but the people that are still here. It's just, yeah, it's just the way it affects us. I just recently had a very good friend of mine who I'd known for 31 years pass away. 97. She had good innings, so we can't knock that. Not at all. But her passing was completely and utterly different to another good friend of mine who passed when she was 89. And the level of contentment in the two people was the most... It was completely and utterly different. And to stand on the outside and have a look at it was... This is going to sound really weird, and I don't mean it like that, but it was really interesting. Because there was one hand, there was somebody who had made their peace in their life and was accepting and open about what was happening. She knew she was going. She knew she wouldn't be in her physical body anymore. But having conversations with that person, she was Mrs. Audrey Lady with the dragonfly and the mill pond, and this is just a travelling device, and, you know, very comfortable in what her beliefs were. And very aware of what was happening, being very aware of what was happening and not worried about it or scared about it. Well, she never showed she was. She was always very comfortable. She's like, well, it's going to happen. I've got all my ducks in a row. I'm very happy. I know what's happening. I've left my instructions, and I'm good. I'm good to go. And she was very comfortable with that, and I had some wonderful sort of out there conversations. And then my other friend, who it was just a completely and utterly different concept. A very strong, independent lady who was very much a woman in a man's world all her life, and didn't relinquish control very often to other people. Well, not at all, actually, to be fair. But seeing her at the moment in time that I did, which was only a day and a half before she passed, it wasn't that she wasn't happy, but it just, the difference between the two, the tranquility between Mrs. Audrey Lady and this lady was completely different. Audrey was very accepting and like, well, I'm off, My other friend, there wasn't that. And I don't know if that was relinquishing that control and going, yeah, I'm done, thank you very much. And not giving into that. She had a belief system, and, she believed in that, and I'm not saying that she didn't. But the difference between the two was quite something. And then it got me thinking about our attitude and our thought pattern towards death and people dying and the humans that are left behind. I got very upset with both my friends, Mrs. Audrey Lady passing and this other lady. But I really struggled with my friend who's recently just gone. I don't know if that's because I've known her since I was 16. I don't know, but I was really struggling. And then I thought to myself, why are you struggling? Because you understand the concept, you know what it's all about. You, in my opinion and my following, I know what my opinion. I am happy with what happens to the soul and what happens to the travelling device, and I know that there's something else further and it's not the end of it and it doesn't get snuffed out. But yeah, I was still upset, and I still found myself going, I'm going to miss you. And my granny passed beginning of the year, and I love my granny to bits, but she's still around, so I don't miss her. She's still here. Still doing her stuff, still being, granny, and still going, oh, you're a bloody nutter. So, I know she's still here, but it's really, my sort of my whole thing was like, I'm doing the human thing of having to grieve that loss. And then it got me into thinking, is why am I grieving that loss when I know that that person hasn't really gone in a physical form? Yes. But in a soul spiritual form, and as wonderful Terry Pratchett always says, as long as someone keeps talking about you, you're never going to die. In my memory, that person hasn't gone. And it gets me to thinking of the grieving process. A lot of people, including my daughter, said, you have to grieve, Mum. Because I kept getting upset, and then I kept telling myself off, kept saying, my friend wouldn't have wanted that. She would have told me to, get myself sorted, back my ideas up, in a nice way, obviously. But it still makes you think. It still makes you think, why do we as humans have to go through that grieving process? Especially, in your spiritual beliefs, if you believe they go on, isn't it? It's the humans having a human thing. And as humans left behind, we feel guilty. I've got a very good friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, that felt guilty that she'd given a member of the family permission to go, or sat there and said to them, you can go, we'll be all right, we'll be okay, you don't have to stick around, we'll sort ourselves out, we'll be okay. And the person was gone the next day. They passed on the next day. And my friend felt really guilty. And I sort of said to them, why do you feel guilty? You shouldn't feel guilty. You gave that person the passage and the permission's the wrong word, but you said, what they were holding out for, don't worry about it, we're okay. So you just sort of said, it's okay, we can go. You can go, we'll be fine. Don't feel guilty for giving somebody that key to walk through, that passage to walk through. So why do we why do we feel guilty about things like that? It's a funny thing, isn't it, grief? I know you have to allow yourself time to... Is it grief, or is it accepting the change? Is it a change thing? Because us humans are terrible with change. Even the simplest things, we don't like things changing. Is it because we don't like change? I don't know. I don't know what it is. But if you know, let me know. What are your thoughts and patterns on death and dying and passing over? What do you feel? What's your experiences as a human dealing with that loss, being human, even though if your spiritual beliefs and followings are, that person doesn't disappear? Is it because we're empathic and we're picking up on everybody else's emotions that might have different spiritual beliefs and followings? But even if you're C of E, your whole thought pattern is that the spirit goes up to heaven and that person continues to live. So what are we mourning? What are we mourning? That person is carrying on. That person's soul and spirit is carrying on, either on this plane with us or in heaven, if that so be your belief. Why do we mourn the loss? What are we mourning? Are we mourning the loss of the transportation device? Which you sit there and you think, hang on a minute, if you look at it as a transportation device, because we know that person will forever be with us. Should memorial services and funerals, should they be more of a celebration of life? I think they should be. I think they should be full of colour, lots of laughs, and a good bit of dance music. Not necessarily dance music, depends what you're into, but that type of thing. I don't think that they should be morbid I think they should be fun and joyous and, yeah. I mean, I listen to Terry Pratchett. I'm a huge, very new Terry Pratchett fan, but a huge fan. Well and truly hook, line and sinker. Definitely the Weird Sisters. I am a Weird Sister fan. And I think it's I think it's Granny Weatherwax that has her wake before she goes. No spoilers. If you haven't read the Terry Pratchett books, then I think you should, and I've probably just given you a spoiler, but hey ho. Because she sort of says, well, I'm not, if I go, I'm not going to be here to enjoy it, and I want to enjoy this and that, and I think that's quite good. I know there's a lot of people that aren't in a position to have a knees up, but when they've gone, I mean, the wake is designed again for us humans having a human experience. So, yeah, it's all put in place for us humans to deal with our emptiness. But there's a lot of people, there's a lot of us out there that believe in another plane and know that there's another plane or there's another energy level. So why does our bodies automatically, it just got me asking, why does our bodies automatically go into this grieving process? Isn't it funny? Because really when you look at it, you sit there and I was finding myself get upset and I'm thinking, why am I getting upset? Why am I getting upset? I know and see and hear, and I know that they still stick around and people still stick around, and they're not, might be physically, the travelling device might physically have disappeared, but them and themselves are still floating around. Why am I getting upset? And then I was getting quite frustrated with myself, and it's just, it's very strange. It's very strange, and I know, I understand we have to have that grieving process. I understand we have to have that detach from that person and letting go process. And I understand all that. But then I also ask my own personal question is, why am I having that? Why do I have to do that when I know that that person or that soul is still around? Why am I doing that? I mean, I'm not taking that away from anybody else. I'm not saying everybody should, I'm not being cold. I was just asking myself that question. Why am I feeling like this when I know there's something else and this is just a travelling device and I know they're not going very far, so why am I getting upset? It was just my personal question. It just makes me wonder. It just makes you start thinking. That's how my weird brain works. But, anywho, 23 minutes on. There's me going, I'm not going to chatty ramble for long. I'm just going to sort myself out and then a little chat because I've not been here for ages and I seem to have rambled on forever and a day. So, hey-de-hoo. So, hopefully, I'm back on it. So, it's been very busy. So, it's been a long time coming, but we are here. I will hopefully at some point, we're aiming for next week, try and get my wonderful friend on with me as well. And then we can start having a little chatty ramble about shadow work and terminology of stuff. Well, that'd be really cool. And yeah, there's lots of things going on in the pipeline as well. So take care. Have a lovely rest of the day, whatever you're doing, day, evening, weekend, week. Have a cracking time. Sun is shining here in jolly old Wiltshire. So, it's good. We will speak to you all soon. And thanks so much for listening. Take care.